afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Carla, and I am the Education and Development Coordinator at NeedyMeds. Before we get started with today's special topics webinar, I'll review a few housekeeping tips. Please note you will have a chance to ask questions at the conclusion of this webinar by typing them into the questions, or for some of you, the chat field of your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll ask for any technical issues that may arise, such as sound or video not working properly. Please send me a message also in the questions or chat panels. I will provide my contact information as well as the contact information for our presenter at the conclusion of this webinar should you have any questions or require further information once we've concluded. So with that, we're ready to begin. Today's special topic webinar is Psoriatic Disease and the National Psoriasis Foundation's Patient Navigation Center. The National Psoriasis Foundation, or NPS, is the world's largest nonprofit psoriasis patient advocacy organization and the voice for millions of Americans who are affected by psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. Their mission is to drive efforts to cure psoriatic disease and improve the lives of those affected. Today's webinar will present information on psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, updated treatment options, and introduce the Patient Navigation Center, which is the world's first personalized support center for psoriatic disease. And the presenter for today's webinar, who we are thrilled to have, is Jennifer Wynn. She is the Education Coordinator at the National Psoriasis Foundation, or again, the NPF, where she develops health education and access to care resources, including treatment booklets and fact sheets. As part of NPS Patient Navigation Center, she works to develop and provide the wealth of resources that the NPF patient navigators utilize when they are providing personalized support to people living with psoriatic disease. With that introduction, I am going to pass over the mic and the screen to Jennifer so she can begin the presentation. Please bear with us while we make this switch since there may be a delay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Carla, and thank you so much for having me. With this, I believe my screen is now showing, and I guess we will jump right in. So as Carla mentioned, I'll be going over topics about psoriatic disease, available treatment options, and then also explaining a little bit about our Patient Navigation Center. So first, let's start with a little bit of background information about psoriasis. So psoriasis is a lifelong condition. It is currently not yet fully understood what exactly causes psoriasis, but we do know that the immune system being overactive plays a role in the inflammation and the development of the symptoms of psoriasis. Another factor that comes into play is genetics in combination with environmental triggers. And what I mean about environmental triggers is that only because someone has the genes for psoriasis does not mean that they will develop psoriasis. Usually there are factors or triggering events that cause the initial onset of psoriasis, such as a stressful event, which can be emotionally, such as heavy stresses at work, or even a death of a close family member, or it can also be a physically stressful event, such as an illness or an infection. So moving on, triggers can start the initial onset of psoriasis, or after you have already developed psoriasis, triggers can cause a sudden outbreak of symptoms, which is also called flares or flare-ups. So what exactly are some triggers that we know about? There are a myriad of them, some that you can see on the screen here, but the point to keep in mind is that triggers are not universal. This means that what may be a trigger for one person's psoriasis may not be a trigger for another person. here are just a few commonly reported triggers that we often hear from patients, like certain foods, gluten, or tomatoes, other nightshade vegetables as well. Again, infections or illnesses, injuries to the skin, stresses, again, certain types of medicines such as beta blockers and others, and certain weather conditions can also affect people and their psoriasis symptoms as well. Again, it is important to note that not everyone will react the same to triggers. By paying attention to your psoriasis and how it reacts to certain things, you'll be able to better understand what your own triggers are. And this is absolutely key to managing your psoriasis, because there are methods that you can employ to either avoid the triggers or minimize your exposure to them. So now, on the same lines of how psoriasis triggers may be different for everyone, psoriasis itself can be different for different people. There are 5 major types of psoriasis, and before going over what they are and some of their characteristics, I want to emphasize that people with psoriasis can have more than one type of psoriasis at any time, and people with psoriasis may have different types of psoriasis at different points in their life as well. So the first one, plaque psoriasis, is actually the most common one that we see in psoriasis patients, and the most common, the common type that people suffer from in general. Here are a few images of plaque psoriasis. Normally, it is characterized as kind of a red, swollen area of affected skin that you can see in this middle one, the redness of it. And then another distinguishing characteristic is the silvery white scale that you can see more dominantly in that rightmost picture. However, the psoriasis patients, many psoriasis patients with skin of color, this redness and the silvery scale isn't as noticeable, and it often appears more as a purplish color, which you can see in the leftmost picture. I just want to point these distinguishing characteristics out because it's common for plaque psoriasis to be misdiagnosed, and by seeing and understanding how these characteristic symptoms may present, you can actually help yourself to finding and getting the right diagnosis and the right treatment for your psoriasis. The next type I would like to talk about is guttate psoriasis. As you can see here, is characterized by these small round spots. Guttate psoriasis is commonly seen in widespread areas of the body, like the trunk or torso in this picture, and it is often seen in younger children, especially after a severe illness or infection such as strep throat or an ear infection. But of course, adults with psoriasis can also develop guttate as well. Next is inverse or intertriginous psoriasis, which is characterized by a very deep redness, as you can see here in this picture. And inverse psoriasis is commonly found in the body fold areas, such as the underarms here, or under breasts or genital areas, which makes inverse a very severe and deeply impactful type of psoriasis. Next, we have erythrodermic, which is more of a rare form of psoriasis that is characterized by this very intense and deep redness, more so than the inverse that we previously saw. And another characteristic is people with erythrodermic also experience heavy shedding of the layers of skin. This is in contrast to the plaque psoriasis, where the skin just continues to build on top, but this one is actually just intense shedding of layers of skin. And because of how severe erythrodermic is, it often requires immediate care and even hospitalization. So knowing the signs and symptoms can be very critical in seeking the right treatment when you do experience erythrodermic, if you do. And the last one I want to talk about is pustular psoriasis, which is characterized by these pustules or these white bumps that you see here in this picture. It should be noted that, like all other forms of psoriasis, pustular is not contagious, and the pus that is found within these bumps is also not contagious at all. And before moving on, I would like to mention that although I've only discussed these 5 major types of psoriasis, there are other types as well, such as psoriasis of the hands and feet, which is called palmoplantar psoriasis. And there's actually 2 forms of palmoplantar, one that is characterized with thickened, very intensely thickened plaques, and there's also a palmoplantar pustular psoriasis, which presents on the hands and feet with these pustules that you see here in this type as well. All right, so what are the common symptoms of psoriasis? This is, in general, including all of the types that we previously spoke about. We hear from many patients about the constant itch and the burning, and in recent years, we've also come to realize that lack of sleep due to the constant itch and irritation is also a common and hugely disabling symptom as well, which is why finding the right treatment is so critical in managing your psoriasis. And of course, these are just a few of them. There are plenty more symptoms that we do hear about. And moving on, aside from the different types of psoriasis and the different areas that can be affected, psoriasis can differ from person to person in how severe it is. Generally, psoriasis is considered mild if it affects less than 3% of the body. Body surface area is actually measured by the palm size. So if you held your hand open, the area of your palm is considered about 1% of the body surface area. So 3% is equal to about 3 palms. Moving on from there, moderate psoriasis is anywhere between 3 to 10 palms or percent of the body. And for psoriasis to be considered severe, it usually affects more than 10% of the body, or if it has any of these other characteristics, whether it's if you have psoriatic arthritis, if you have psoriasis involved in any of your vulnerable areas, such as the face or the hands and feet or genital areas, because these areas are able to greatly impact your quality of life if they are affected. So yeah. Now, lastly, is psoriasis linked to other diseases? Well, the short answer to this is yes. Although we don't yet fully understand what causes psoriasis, we do know that there is the underlying inflammation that drives psoriasis symptoms. And this inflammation is what causes the skin symptoms, but it's also affecting the organs inside the body, which has been shown to be the link to some of these other related diseases or comorbidities, such as diabetes and heart disease and other inflammatory diseases as well. We also know that there is a link between increased rates of depression and psoriasis. And with all of these in mind, we can go back to that severity scale that we just saw in the previous slide and see how much of an impact psoriasis can have on your overall quality of life. And we can see how important it is to have the right diagnosis and to have the right treatment plan to not only control your psoriasis, reducing your symptoms, but to also help to reduce your risk for any of these other comorbidities. So now, before moving on to treatment, let's briefly talk about psoriatic arthritis. In the previous slide, psoriatic arthritis was listed as a disease that is linked to psoriasis. So what exactly is that relationship? Well, like with psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis is a lifelong disease that is related to the immune system being overactive. And this overactive immune system is causing the increased inflammation. But psoriatic arthritis affects the joints and the tendons, whereas psoriasis causes the skin symptoms. It's important to note that about 1 in 3 people with psoriasis develop psoriatic arthritis. And if left untreated, psoriatic arthritis can lead to permanent joint damage, which can be severely disabling. So early diagnosis and treatment is absolutely critical in slowing down the effects of psoriatic arthritis and possibly preventing permanent joint damage and disability. So because early diagnosis and treatment is so important to preventing any damage being done to your joints, it's important to know what the symptoms and the characteristics are so that you can seek the right care before any damage has been done. Here is a list of some common symptoms for psoriatic arthritis. I would like to emphasize a couple of them, such as the morning stiffness, nail changes, such as separation of the nail from the nail bed, pitting, which appears like small holes on the nails, and also nail discoloration that might present like a fungal infection, and of course the stiffness, pain, and swelling of the joints or tendons. Now let's take a look at some defining characteristics of psoriatic arthritis. These characteristics are unique to psoriatic arthritis and can help with getting the correct diagnosis if they're present. I just want to emphasize how important it is, again, that these symptoms and characteristics are, because a lot of patients that do have psoriatic arthritis go on for long periods of time with misdiagnosis for other forms of arthritis and other conditions when they really do need to be getting that psoriatic arthritis diagnosis. So the first unique characteristic is called enthesitis, which is inflammation of the tendons. These are the areas that connect bone together, so at the joints and such. And enthesitis is commonly seen in the bottoms of the feet and the Achilles heel or the Achilles tendon. But enthesitis can also affect other areas of the body as well. Another distinct characteristic of psoriatic arthritis is what is commonly called sausage digits, or the sausage fingers or toes. You can see this image is in the right here, where the toes and the fingers are so inflamed and swollen that they look like sausages, hence the name. And note that the fingers and toes are not affected on the right and left side, and this asymmetrical presentation is another unique characteristic of psoriatic arthritis. And lastly, I just want to mention that psoriatic arthritis can also affect the spine, which is called spondylitis. Know that not all of these characteristics or symptoms have to be present for you to have psoriatic arthritis, but if you do have any of these or any of the symptoms from the previous slide, you should speak with your healthcare provider about getting a diagnosis or a referral to a specialist, such as a rheumatologist, in order to get the diagnosis and get on a treatment plan to control the disease and prevent any permanent damage. So how is psoriatic arthritis diagnosed? There are actually many different ways. Your healthcare provider may review your personal and family history if you have psoriasis or if you have psoriatic arthritis in your family. You may also have a physical exam or blood tests which help to rule out other diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis. And you may also even have MRIs or X-rays as well. This bottom list here is just to show a few of the other diseases that psoriatic arthritis may be confused with or misdiagnosed as. By understanding the symptoms and the unique characteristics that we just went over, you can have a more productive conversation with your healthcare provider in getting the right diagnosis. So now let's talk about treatment options for both psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. So although there isn't a cure yet, there are many different treatment options that can help to reduce your symptoms and slow down the progression of the diseases. In discussing the different treatment options, it's important to keep in mind that just like psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis are different for different people, the treatments also work differently for different people. So not every treatment will work for everyone, and oftentimes you may have to try a couple of different treatment options until you find the one that works best for you. Or you may have to have a combination of treatments even that work together to reduce your symptoms. And another factor that I would like to mention is that psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis can change over time. So if a treatment plan works for you now, it may not work later on. So it's important to continuously work with your healthcare provider to find the best treatment options for you and to have a continued relationship with your provider in order to best manage your condition. So what are the treatment options? As you can see here, this is the general order of treatment options and approaches, going from topicals to phototherapy or light therapy, traditional systemics and targeted oral treatments, and biologics and biosimilars. In making a treatment recommendation or treatment plan, your healthcare provider should aim to reduce your symptoms and also minimize your risks or side effects by starting with lower dosages or strengths of the treatment option. So in making a treatment decision, many things have to be taken into consideration by you and your healthcare provider. Some major points that should be considered are your level of disease severity, which I'll go into more detail about later on. But the emphasis here is that if you have severe psoriasis, your treatment has to match in order to be able to control or manage your severe symptoms. And another thing that should be considered is the type of psoriasis that you have, because different types may have to be treated differently, especially if the symptoms are in sensitive areas. Age should also be considered, and especially cost is a very large consideration, which is why the resources that NeedyMeds provides is so highly invaluable, because a great treatment plan is only effective if it can be afforded and followed. So let's talk about how the treatment options break down depending on your disease severity. So starting with mild psoriasis, that can normally be managed with using topicals and or phototherapy, which treats the symptoms on the skin from the skin outside. Moderate to severe psoriasis is often managed with one of these other treatment options or a combination of them, which can also include topicals as well. And the traditional systemics, the targeted oral treatments, the biologics, and biosimilars treat psoriasis from the inside out, which is targeted towards controlling the inflammation inside. And now let's talk about psoriatic arthritis treatments, which psoriatic arthritis can also be categorized by severity, but treating psoriatic arthritis is a bit different in that all levels should be treated with one of these treatment options listed here. And the reason for this is because these medicines are able to treat the inflammation inside the body, like I had previously mentioned. There are other treatment options that can be used in combination with these as well, some to manage the pain and others to help target lifestyle treatment approaches. But it is important that one of these options are used in order to prevent disease progression and the permanent joint damage that I've mentioned earlier. So let's break down what these treatment options are now that we understand how to approach treating psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. So the first line of treatment options for psoriasis are topicals, like I had previously said. Again, they treat psoriasis on the skin. Topicals can come in different strengths, including over-the-counter that you can buy without a prescription, and of course, prescription strengths. Over-the-counter topicals can include products like bath solutions, moisturizers, and scale lifters. And there are also some over-the-counter products that you can buy that contain ingredients such as tar or salicylic acid that can help with reducing inflammation and itch. Or it can also help with removing the scales if you have like plaque psoriasis. Next, we have prescription topicals, which work by reducing the inflammation, itch, and pain. They can also help to lessen the plaques, how thick they are. There are different types of prescription topicals that you can be prescribed, including vitamin A, vitamin D, steroids, and others that are used primarily for other conditions such as eczema, which have also been found to be slightly effective for psoriasis as well. After topicals, the second line of treatment is phototherapy or light therapy. Again, phototherapy can be used for mild and moderate psoriasis. There are different types of phototherapy, as you can see here, although UVB is the most common, the most effective, and the safest of the options. And there are different sized units as well, whether you have small areas affected or larger areas. In this picture, you can see that this gentleman is treating with a whole body unit, but there are handheld units available that can target smaller areas such as a 1-inch by 1-inch plaque or slightly larger, or there's also units that are handheld that can treat the scalp as well. The next level of treatment options for psoriasis include the traditional systemics, the targeted oral treatments, and biologics and biosimilars. Again, these treatments are highly effective and are generally used for moderate to severe psoriasis and for any severity level of psoriatic arthritis. So here we'll start with the traditional systemics. The 4 listed here have some hand symbols next to them. The white hand shows that they're approved for psoriasis, and the blue hands show that they are approved for psoriatic arthritis. So traditional systemics, which are often referred to as systemics, work on the entire immune system. And I mentioned earlier that psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis is linked to an overactive immune system. So what these systemic medicines do is that they decrease that overactive function of the immune system in order to reduce your symptoms. And systemic medicines are usually taken either as a liquid or as a pill form, or they can also come as a shot or an injection. The next type in this category is the targeted oral treatment. These can be thought of as kind of a bridging between the traditional systemics and the newer biologics. This is because they act on specific proteins in the immune system, which is like the biologics, rather than the entire immune system, which was like the traditional systemics. But they are like the systemics in that they are taken orally, again, as a pill form. And as you can see here, there is currently only one targeted oral treatment that is approved for psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. And then we have the biologics and the biosimilars. These are the newest treatment options and considered the most effective treatment options available for psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. These have come a long way since the first treatment options available, and now some of them are able to help improve psoriasis symptoms and even help patients achieve long-term clearance, so which has been found to be over years, at least a year or two of long-term clearance. So these differ from the traditional systemics, again, in that they act on specific proteins in the immune system rather than the whole immune system. And the three different categories here, the interleukin 12 and 23s, the interleukin 17As, and the TNF alphas, these three different categories show what the protein is that the biologics are actually targeting in order to reduce the symptoms. And these medicines are given as a shot or as an IV infusion. Some other treatment options for psoriatic arthritis include a class of medicines called NSAIDs. These NSAIDs serve as pain relievers, which come in, again, over-the-counter products such as aspirin or ibuprofen, but they can also come in prescription strength as well. It is fairly common for these to be used in combination with other treatment options as well to alleviate the pain and joint symptoms, but using a systemic or a biologic to also target that inflammation in psoriatic arthritis patients. So it should be noted that if you do have psoriatic arthritis, treating with these NSAIDs alone is not enough because they don't address that inflammation inside the body. Other options include physical therapy or occupational therapy, which are very effective in helping to keep that range of motion healthy and for also preventing further damage as well. And in some rare situations, splints or surgeries can also help to relieve pain and help with that range of motion again. And lastly, for treatments, there are also some other approaches that are referred to as complementary and alternative medicine. This entails many other types of therapies that are not commonly considered part of Western or traditional medicine. These can vary from diet and lifestyle changes to acupuncture, acupressure, and other mind and body practices. These can be very helpful and beneficial if you are interested in exploring holistic methods of treatment. But again, I would like to emphasize that for moderate to severe psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis, the root of the symptoms that are being presented is the inflammation from within the body. And although these practices can help to reduce symptoms, the underlying inflammation should also be treated. So it's great to consider these treatment options, but to also use them in combination with other therapies as well. I can't stress enough how psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis are complex conditions that require ongoing support and care at each turn. Learning about the disease and the different treatment options are helpful and can be highly valuable as a starting point to getting your disease under control, But effective disease management requires you to have a great care team and also requires effort on your part in order to adhere to a treatment plan as well. So what does that mean? Well, your care team should include your healthcare provider or providers. Maybe you have a primary care physician, or maybe you have a specialist that you see, a dermatologist or a rheumatologist. It can include NeedyMeds resources to help you with financial assistance. It can include your friends or family members that help to support you. And it can include the National Psoriasis Foundation's Patient Navigation Center, which is the world's first personalized support center for patients with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. Our Patient Navigation Center provides personalized one-on-one support for people with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, their providers, families, and caregivers. And we're staffed by a team of highly trained patient navigators that are knowledgeable on all information and resources that can help you on your journey to better health. We provide personalized guidance to help you get the right care, treatment, and support needed to best manage your disease. And this can include finding providers and helping you to prepare for appointments, helping you with accessing treatments, such as resources for insurance denials and appeals, navigating the insurance marketplace in general, or finding assistance in affording your treatments, and of course, providing emotional support for you every step of the way. The Patient Navigation Center does not provide any diagnostic or medical services and should not be a substitute for the care of your healthcare providers, but by offering direct service and ongoing support, the Patient Navigation Center hopes to empower you to actively participate in your care and achieve a better quality of life. So here is a list of methods to contacting the National Psoriasis Foundation's Patient Navigation Center. The Patient Navigation Center can be reached Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 5 p.m. Pacific time. All services are also available in other languages as well. And at this point, that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank you so much for joining in today. And now I'll switch the controls back to Carla for any questions that you have at this time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jennifer. You did an excellent job explaining the different types of conditions under the vast umbrella of psoriatic disease. I was personally surprised at the extent of the different diagnoses. And bear with me a moment, I'm just switching my screen back. There we go. So as I was saying, I was surprised at the extent of the different diagnoses under that umbrella, but I do now understand the importance of getting the specific diagnosis right, as it's imperative to treatment. But I was pleased to see that there are myriad treatment options for people out there. And as Jennifer mentioned earlier in her webinar presentation, that's where hopefully NeedyMeds comes in. For those of you that don't know about us, NeedyMeds is a national nonprofit organization that essentially connects patients and providers to programs that will help people afford their healthcare expense needs. So as you can see, we absolutely have an aligned mission with the Psoriatic Foundation, as we're both hoping that people will expect more from their healthcare and we can help them to get there. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys, hopefully, how you'll be able to find some assistance paying for the meds, if you need it, through the NeedyMeds website. And I'll just take a few moments of your time. If you guys will bear with me, I'm going to switch to our live NeedyMeds website. So as Jennifer mentioned, there are myriad over-the-counter assistive devices and prescription meds and treatments that can help somebody diagnosed with this condition. But as she so rightly said as well, those options are only great if people can actually afford them and get them. So I wanted to just point out a few quick resources on the NeedyMeds website where you can hopefully get the help you need paying for these meds. Most of the assistance you'll need will be found under the Patient Savings tab. And I'm going to start out with our diagnosis information pages. And those are exactly what they sound like. They're informational and educational pages dedicated to specific diagnoses. And as you can see, our host partners with us on sponsoring the psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis diagnosis page. And on there is some concise information about the diagnosis, some reputable links. But what we feel differs our diagnosis information page from other resources available on the website is we do our best to keep an updated list of medications that are used in the treatment of this diagnosis. And each of those drugs, you'll notice, are hyperlinked. That's because once you click on that drug name, the website will do the work of attempting to find whether there's a program available to help you pay for that med. And we will work with our partners on a regular basis from NPF to make sure we've got that drug list updated regularly. So Jennifer, you do know to reach out if we need to make any updates.
Absolutely.
As Jennifer also mentioned, when people are diagnosed with psoriasis, sometimes they're also diagnosed with other types of conditions. Keeping that in mind, if there is a drug listed here, you need a drug that is not listed here, you can always search for it by typing in to the blinking field on the top left-hand side where my cursor is, the drug search bar, to find if there is a program available, or you can simply search by the brand or generic name. You also have the option of using our NeedyMeds drug discount card. The NeedyMeds drug discount card, we're proud to say, can be used at more than 65,000 pharmacies nationwide, and it can save you up to 80% off of your over-the-counter medication, believe it or not, as long as it's written by a prescription, like a prescription by your doctor, or of course a prescription med if you have the valid script with you. You can use the NeedyMeds drug discount card anytime if you don't have insurance, or you can use it instead of your insurance. You can certainly take a look at our website to find out more information about that. And we always encourage people to call our 800 number at the top of the screen if you're having any difficulty finding what you need. You can also find, in addition to prescription assistance cost savings programs, you can also find diagnosis-based assistance programs. And that's where you would find help for healthcare needs outside of medications. So as Jennifer mentioned earlier, sometimes people find themselves in need of having a splint or assistive device. That's the type of product you would find are the diagnosis-based assistance programs. Now just bear with me once again while I switch from here back to my PowerPoint presentation and make sure I covered all of the resources I wanted to point out today. And we did. And just as a recap, you're going to want to check out our diagnosis information pages, our prescription assistance programs, our diagnosis-based assistance programs, as well as whether or not our drug discount card will work for you. And of course, all of those can be found under the patient savings portion of our website. Just to make sure you have it, I'm putting up on your screen once again the contact information for our host, Jennifer, as well as the information for the Patient Navigation Center. And you can reach out to me at webinar@needymeds.org. Before we wrap up the webinar, I'm going to take a moment to open up the floor for questions. Once again, keep in mind that you can type in your questions in either the question field or the chat field of your GoToWebinar control panel. Please feel free to submit them anytime. In the next few moments, we'll do our best to answer them. And please do know if we don't get an opportunity to thoroughly answer everything, we'd be happy to follow up with you at the conclusion of this webinar. And while we're waiting to see if any questions come in, another thing I do want to mention is that this webinar has been recorded, and we will go ahead and post it on the NeedyMeds YouTube channel so that you can share it with your friends, family, colleagues, or even return to it to use it as a resource. So it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in this afternoon. So I'm going to take the time once again to thank everyone for joining us, and especially thank our host, Jennifer, for pointing out all of the resources your foundation works so hard to offer the public. And certainly congratulations on the new Patient Navigation Center, which is no doubt filling an extremely important need for a lot of people and their families. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. On behalf of our Psoriasis Foundation and NeedyMeds, we do look forward to keeping in touch. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon and take care. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Carla, and thank you everyone for attending.